type of situation going on with the Aboriginals. And I think maybe this is an instance where Mother Earth has stepped in and said, hey, you need to wake up and see what you're doing to the people that were here before you. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I'll just show you the photo. I can do share screen right now. I've got the photo up here.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, this is the actual photo, not doctored.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's amazing.
And there's,
isn't it?
I'm going to switch to the Aboriginal flag real quick. There it is right
wow.
there. And then there's George's photo.
Oh, that's incredible.
Wow.
That is, wow.
Isn't it amazing? So I'll just stop the share. So as you could see, things are playing out in a much bigger picture way than a lot of people are willing to acknowledge or realise. It's Australia Day here today.
They're calling it Invasion Day.
Exquisite.
It sounds like the Aboriginals and others are protesting it as Invasion Day.
Yeah, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about it. They were invaded and another culture came here and imposed. There was, they say that this was uninhabited pretty much and there was nothing going on here, but they had 250 nations, because we're a big space. It's a big continent. The landmass here is only 10% smaller than the United States in area. And we've got about 25 million people, 27 million here. So it's a big place. And when you realize there was 250 nations and they had trade routes, they used to one of their currencies was ochre, for example. So they had a lot of structure going on here, but it's very convenient of the English Empire to, say that there's nothing here.
Right.
It's uninhabited and they're just a bunch of savages. Where had this really, really interesting experience in the Flinders Ranges when I was on my, really deep journey and spending time with the elders there. And I was I was in this land that is considered one of the balance points of the earth, if not the balance point. It's called Grid Point 44. And it has to do with Mount Chambers and Chambers Gorge and out that area. It's north of Wilpena Pound, about 2 hours drive away from Wilpena Pound. And I was sitting under a tree and it gets very hot there. And I was just really tuning in with the land. I was seeing massive rock formations, which were just beautiful purple color and stuff like that. And this gentleman came up, tall, elderly gentleman, beard, sort of stately sort of gentleman, and his wife, and they were just hiking through. And we got to talking, and then I started talking about, the connection to the land and all this, and he started rattling off all his PhDs and, he's a university professor. And then I made the statement, I said, did you know that the Australian Aborigines are the most advanced race on the planet? And he lost it. He totally lost his shit. Like, he really did. And how dare you, he was totally insulted by that statement. I'm a professor in this and a professor in that and blah, 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 blah. And I actually ended up saying to him, you might have all these little letters after your name and intellectually you might be pretty impressive. I said, but how is it you know so little about life?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because he had no idea about connecting with nature, being one with nature, being one with the earth, with the sun, with the galaxy, with the universe. I mean, you might be really good at reciting curriculum that you've been programmed with in an educational construct, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know so little about life, which exists beyond that actual paradigm or that curriculum, that construct, this little bubble that you're.
Knowledge and wisdom are two different things.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Our last show, unfortunately, ended a little abruptly, at least the interview portion, because we had a scientist or pseudoscientist on, and that's the box that he was kind of stuck in. And when I started asking questions outside of that box, he became very, very, very rude. And then it got to the point of aggression, and it got to the point of having to just say, okay, it's not working out. And we continued and did a great show after that. But I know what you mean. There's so many perspectives to this. We have to see the scientific, but we also have to open the door and understand the energies, because it all works together, in my humble opinion. But unfortunately, I'm far too familiar with the type of consciousness that you're referring to.
Yeah, well, we acknowledge what they're talking about, and then we also acknowledge the rest of life.
Right.
The issue is they're saying that what they are exposed to and the knowledge that they have is life. You see? And I wrote in my book, I actually wrote this 10 years ago. It's like they got their head in their box. They're in a little box, and it's like this little box. You imagine a little box on the ground there, right? And they're in the little person inside that box, and it's sounding like I'm being derogatory, but I'm putting this in the context for you, right? And most of our awareness is inside that box with those people. So we're in there too, right? And then our inner beings, which I also call the greater being, but I like now to really reference it as the inner being, right, is out here with the rest of life, okay? And what's inside that box is what humanity knows about life, most of humanity. Some of us know more, right? Some of us know less. But what most of humanity knows and the narrative of our society is inside that box. Now, visualize a little box sitting in front of you on the ground, right? And a little person pops out of that box, a little tiny, teeny, weeny human being, right? And your awareness, you're expanding now to your much greater awareness and more of your being, your multidimensional nature. We're beginning to integrate. We're awakening from the veil of amnesia in this world, right? So now we're starting to integrate with our multidimensional nature. We're fully aware of the multidimensional nature of reality and of life in this universe and beyond into the infinite nature of life. So we're aware of that, and to the point that we're actually having direct experience with it now. And it's not something fantastical or delusional or something in the realms of fantasy or imagination. It's direct experience. Millions of people around the world are experiencing this awakening process. It is what is known as the apocalypse, right? We're all having our own individual apocalypse, which is then going to translate to the greater apocalypse, right? The revealing, the revealing of the logos from the good spirit, apocalypsi from the good spirit. Okay, so looking at that person, he's screaming. That little guy in the box, he's one of those academics who's been programmed here, programmed in here, right? That's why I'm wearing this shirt, by the way, purposefully. So they're programmed here with a curriculum, yeah? So yes, they understand that curriculum and they're very good at understanding that curriculum, and they're looking at life in a particular way because they're limited. See, they're limited to the technology that they're using because they still believe the human race is at the forefront of evolution and that there's been nothing before, right? That we just come out of savagery, right? That's their belief system. Remember, they are priests. It's a religion. I mean, okay, they don't wear black robes. No, honestly, they don't wear black robes.
I'm chuckling because you're saying all the stuff that the people in the chat room were saying last week when all this was happening. And I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's a religion.
Yep.
They don't wear they don't wear brown robes. They wear white robes, and they have prophets. Their prophets are Newton and people like that. Okay, and Darwin. That's another prophet of theirs. Okay. So they're behaving in the same way. The timeline is exactly the same as religion, because God created the world 6,500 years ago, and they say we came out of the Stone Age 6,500 years ago. So once again, the timelines are exact. It's just, alter egos of the same construct, right? The same ideology, really. And so these people walk around in these white robes, and they are very much religious fanatics. And so when you question their religion, they don't like it because they have this sense of power through this religion, yeah? And it's the same as anybody else as a religious fanatic. They behave in exactly the same way. And it's really interesting that they actually persecute people, religious people, for behaving in exactly the same way that they behave. And I find that, it's a point of interest for me. So here you got this little guy that's in the box, and he's screaming out at me and he's saying, "You're wrong. We understand everything about life, and you're just in a delusional fantasy." And as I'm walking away from that box, I turn around and I say to that little guy, "Are you really sure about that? Like, are you absolutely sure about what you are saying?" And I continued to turn around and walk on with my life. I continue to grow. I continue to integrate with my multidimensional nature. I continue to have direct experiences, 100% direct experiences, which cannot be proved by their technology because their technology is limited to the paradigm that they exist in. And they're being forced to use those technologies, and they're looking at life through the technologies they're being forced to use, therefore limiting their perspective on life because somebody is telling them you can only use these technologies. Because there's so many more technologies available in life on the planet, like so many more. And moving forward into this decade, this dialogue, this narrative needs to be had because right now, we have all the technology that we need to liberate the human race from slavery, poverty, homelessness, disease, everything that makes our life a suffering existence.
We do, but if I can jump in and interject for just a moment.
Yep.
We have the technology, but we don't have the consciousness to use that technology appropriately.
Yep.
We have AI. AI is wonderful. AI is great, but the consciousness of the people who have built AI is not.
Right.
Yeah, that's the point. That's where I was getting to.
Oh.
No, but that shows how much we're in serendipitous, harmony, right? Mm-hmm. It just shows it.
There you go.
Yeah. Because what's happening is the mindset of the people that are at the higher, what we would call in the world, in the terms of hierarchy, at the higher end of the globe. And sorry for the flat earthers, but it actually is a globe, and I don't mean to be rude. I've seen it from out there, and it is a globe. And so I won't get in further into that, but it is, yeah.
I say it's a hologram. So it's whatever you observe it as, but that's just my take.
Oh, we can get into that later.
Okay.
Plenty of time to get into that.
Go ahead.
We can have a little sparring session in regards to that later on. We'd love to do that.
Well, the hologram thing, it's safe because it's not really safe. It pisses both sides off. It pisses the globe people and the flat earth people off. But, it's kind of right in the middle, though. That's where I like to be, right in the middle. Take us away.
Well, like I said, let's leave that bout for later on. Just right now, we'll just stay with this because what I wanted to express was what we have on the planet is people who are making decisions based on their religious beliefs. And if anybody has seen The Family, you'll understand what's going on behind American politics. That's pretty obvious to see. And if you haven't seen this series called The Family, you need to see it. You really need to see it. For years, I've been talking about how behind every geopolitical model is a theocratic model. Every single one, including communism, they worship the dictators as a god. Anybody who's lived in a communist society will tell you that. So it is a theocratic model because people truly believe that the dictator does good things to them when they pray to him. Or her. Mostly it's a him. So it's the same construct, but just expressed in a different way. So we have this power structure controlling this hierarchical construct on Earth, which is run by this interdimensional influence. It's not so much extraterrestrial. It is some of that, and that's where they want you to focus, but the real main power is interdimensional. And when we're talking about, and I've talked about this before, it has to do with the deities that they worship. In other words, when you track the energy, it actually goes back to the gods. And even if you have a god claiming to be the god of gods, it's still a god. So what we're dealing with is a god. We're dealing with the gods, regardless of their claims. It's just the gods. And it's the realities that they've constructed using a mathematical construct, and that is called the hologram of the gods. And it is all based on what people, and it's an emerging religion because they're going back to it. It was, Atlantis fell because of it, and it's called sacred geometry. Okay, that's what people call it. And so this whole thing to do with reality is built out of mathematics and numbers and geometry because they're containers of containment. and the gods are control freaks. So they have to build these realities that they can build templates and structures that they can control everything that then expresses itself inside of those templates. And that's the way they operate. But the natural way of life is all free flowing. It's ebbing and flowing. And there is no mathematical construct to it. It's actually functions in quite a different way. And the hologram of the gods is trying to mimic the natural way of life. And they try and they've actually created quite a big universal paradigm, it's a pseudo universal paradigm. And a lot of people who connect into deity worship of any kind, because these are all different sub-deific interfaces from much greater powers in the hologram of the gods beyond. And they're influencing all the people that enter into secret societies. They do ritual practice, they do worship of one kind or another, they enter into prayer and one kind or another. They give themselves over to these entities that promise them great and wonderful things in this world. They become devotees, and it's the same construct over and over again. And you just see it expressing itself in different forms. And I've shared this before, that it's really interesting in the whole conspiratorial arena. You have so many people castigating and persecuting the Freemasons, and the practices that they do, and they say it's all satanic and this, that, and the other. Yet they will go and do exactly the same practice, identical, just has a different name attached to it. But the actual practice of chakras, kundalini, pineal gland is absolutely 100% identical to what the Freemasons are doing in their rituals. So when they do the spirit fire thing and they bring it up the spinal column and it hits the eye of God, their God, what they're doing is they're getting the kundalini to come up, the 33 vertebrae, it hits the pineal gland, and then boom, they're calibrated straight into the hologram of the gods, because this is a transceiver device. It's a piezoelectric device. It's got layers of crystals in there, and then when through the practices, it gets squeezed. And then it fires up, and then boom, you're instantly calibrated into the hologram of the gods. So what's happening is the practices are absolutely 100% identical. And so you've got to come to terms with the reality of what's actually going on in this world. And I came out with this stuff a long time ago, over 10 years ago, freaked everybody out, and I totally get it. But the amount of people that are now realizing that what I actually said 10 years ago is they're for their own self. They're not believing it because I said so. And I'll give you an example. Recently, I had a private session with a lady who's been a yoga teacher for pretty much about 20, 30 years. I can't remember exactly how long she's been doing it. A long time. And she's very proficient at it. And I'm not going to give the location away, but let's say it's an exclusive location where really high-end people on the planet go to do these yoga practices. And she was in a class and they were chanting for about 6 to 8 hours. When they do this chant, so they can hit that bliss point, right? And when she saw the bliss point getting achieved, all of a sudden what happened is her sight just opened up. And she experienced the bliss on one level. She saw everybody in the room blissing out. Then she saw these like almost like spider leg things coming down, plugging into each person and then sucking on their life force. And then what happens is the people are blissed out, but their life force is being sucked out of them at the same time. It's like a spider injects, let's say someone injects, there are insects, there are creatures out there that will inject their prey with a substance, totally like a heroin hit, bliss everybody out, and then they will slowly consume them. And even though people are not being physically consumed in that moment, their life force is being consumed. And this is what's going on in the layers behind. You don't actually understand the layers beyond the bliss level of thing. And I'm not saying this to get people not to be happy and joyful in life. Joy emanates, we turn inside out. We've got our own little supernova going on. That's the true joy. But if you're going to, try and connect to these gods and these programs and all these things that they provide for you so you can bliss and do all these incredible things and get that high going on, then all of a sudden there's got to be a trade-off. What's the trade-off? And the trade-off is unseen because it's interdimensional. So once you get the bliss, you get hit with it. Very few people have the ability to see beyond it. And I think the Series V was absolutely fantastic in explaining, came out in 2009. I was talking about all this stuff way before then. Came out in 2009 and totally exposed all of this for people who actually had the eyes to see and the ears to hear, as we say, to totally get it. So we need to understand the bigger picture of what's happening in our world and understand that everybody is being assimilated into the same practices, the same rituals that the ruling elite have been doing in secret for a long time. And now it's being disseminated into society, and everybody's hitting these same bliss points and accessing these same bits of knowledge because they're accessing knowledge, universal knowledge and knowledge beyond through a gland in their head. And they're not doing it through natural relationship, through the heart and the soul.
Right.
That's very well said. And you're right. Things you were saying 10 years ago are really resonating with me. And they have been over the last couple of years, but it wasn't because you said so. It was because I started to experience it myself. Yeah. Even things that seemed completely contrary to what you would imagine that the path would be, which includes some of the bliss type of stuff that you're talking about now. In my own ayahuasca journeys, I remember we would hit that state of bliss, and we thought that was the goal, to get to that state of bliss. Finally, that state of bliss got boring. And I said, I want something more. I want to go beyond this. Once I told myself I wanted to go beyond it and broke that, that's when the true gnosis and understanding started to come in, because I started to understand this space, this heart space, a lot more, and what lays beyond that heart space, which is our, what I call raw consciousness, our true consciousness, unprogrammed and unfettered and unoverlaid. And the goal then became to get to that part of the consciousness as opposed to the bliss. But the bliss is kind of like a trap. It's like the Garden of Eden story. They say that mankind was in a constant state of bliss. Perhaps they were, but ignorance is bliss and bliss is ignorance. So when you're kept in a constant state of bliss, you have no reason to change anything. You have no reason to evolve. And I think that's part of the trap that they have us here, is if you can reach that bliss state, then that's it. They've got you in that little box. And I love the analogy that you put out, which is like a spider or something injecting some kind of blissful numbing poison into you before feeding upon you. And I see this time and time again, and people do it willingly, but people will also break it willingly. I'm confident about that as well.
Yeah, this lady, as soon as she saw that, she went searching on the internet to see who's talking about this sort of stuff, because it freaked her right out. And we're talking about famous people go to these places to do their yoga things as well. And people have experienced it. And I know yoga teachers here in Australia that used to do the Kundalini yoga and don't do it anymore. They just do natural yoga. And natural yoga started out from the armies in India thousands of years ago, because they needed to have exercises they can do while they're away, for long periods of time. They didn't have access to equipment to train with. So they had to come up with exercises that was going to help the energies flow through the body and keep them fit and healthy and flexible for the fighting techniques at the same time. That's where yoga spawned from originally. And then it got hijacked by religious constructs. Right. And then got turned into all this Kundalini yoga stuff. So there's yoga teachers now that are just don't want anything to do with the Kundalini and just are teaching just natural yoga, which is just really to do with body love and to do with, our relationship with our actual vessel.
I recently heard a story, secondhand, but it's from somebody I trust deeply. And she said that a friend of hers, has basically been recruited by one of these groups, that they have castles in Europe. They're, just really, they do bizarre rituals. Let's just leave it at that. And, they essentially can make somebody orgasm for several hours straight without even touching them. And I think that's, kind of exactly what you're talking about, where it's an artificial bliss, but then you pay for it by allowing that to kind of take over your essence. Not really your body, but your essence is now in service to that group. And I think that's what they're doing all around, except it's just done in more subtle ways.
Yeah, people don't understand that these these ritual practices are agreements being formulated and signed. Mm-hmm. This is entering into invitation. This is entering into agreements. Some people might call them contracts. Mm-hmm. And you are signing with your consent and then you are actually giving yourself over to these energies. So ritual and practice, you've got to be very careful what you enter into.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we can apply that same principle of what's going on with that to, you know, all around. We're getting it every single day. Whenever we watch YouTube videos about Kundalini meditation and all of that, I think there's a lot in there that's embedded that you can't really see until you really think about, okay, what is this doing to my mind and what is this doing to my consciousness? And I think it kind of lulls you to sleep, and then you hit that bliss point. And if somebody's not telling you, hey, you've got to make sure that that Kundalini loop is completed or you'll go crazy, then people are just going to be going crazy all over the place. And that, I think that's exactly what's happening, especially with the quote unquote new age kind of community.
Oh, absolutely. And with a lot of this too, it's we are entering into a phase where, and I had this beautiful discussion earlier with a gentleman in my local cafe here, and I said to him, you know, and he's been deep in the new age, he's been a healer, he's done body work for many years, and he's been looking at my work, and he recognized me when I was down there, and he said, you know, you George? I went, yeah. He goes, man, you know, you've got really got me thinking now. And we sat down, we had a little chat, and I explained it to him like this. I said, as a being, I was having experiences on Earth in other dimensions. And in these other dimensions, everything is in harmony and unity. This is the distorted ego of Mother Earth here, this one. And in these other dimensions, everything is in unity. These particular ones, there's ones that are worse than this one, but that's, you know, very limited realm. And I had a single energetic center. And when I came back into this construct, this body, I felt myself being ripped apart, fragmented and compartmentalized into these systems. And what happens is when you start having experiences of your being, and I had many others, not just that one, that's one example. So I had many others to do with having multidimensional experiences in other planets, in other worlds, understanding that there's other chakra systems that happen. This isn't the only place that the people who designed the chakra system and infused it into our human physiology, this isn't the only place they've done this. It happens in many other places because, you know, the hologram of the gods is a vast multidimensional empire. It's huge, and it's assimilated countless star systems, planetary systems, galactic systems, and it spans many dimensions. It's a huge thing. Like I said, it's a pseudo universal paradigm. So when people connect with the pineal gland to that, and because we've been very limited here, all of a sudden they have this expansion that goes on, and they're hitting all these different dimensions of realities. They're seeing all these wonderful geometric patterns, and they're, you know, connecting with these different races that live and cultures that live inside of this pseudo universal paradigm. And because they're hitting that, they think that's it, but they don't realize that that is still a very limited universal construct, and the rest of the universe exists well beyond that. And it's even though it's quite colossal in nature, compared to the rest of the universe, it's still just a drop in the ocean, right? Really.
The way I see it, it's like different layers of a trap or a prison or something like that. You know, you get out of the cell and then you hit the courtyard and you think the courtyard is outside, but in actual fact, you're still behind a wall. That wall is behind a fence, and you have to keep on going and breaking all of those different walls. But a lot of people get stuck at that first level, in my opinion.
Well, think of each wall as one of your belief systems.
Yeah, your BS.
You know, and these walls are made up of not just your own belief systems. You see, our human body has been traveling through time and space, right? The vessel, the bloodlines. Remember? It was just bloodlines. And then what we do is we choose the combination of the bloodlines and the two people, because coming into that bloodline and those two people coming together are going to create the theme and the circumstances that our soul requires for experience, learning, and growth. So that's why we choose our parents, and our parents choose us for a much greater level, you know, beyond this sphere of time. They actually we choose who's going to play what role for whom. before the reality gets created and before we enter into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we choose this. So here we have our bloodlines have been traveling through time and space, here on the ground, 3D level, back through decades, centuries, millennia, right? All that ancestry here on the planet. Now, how do you know, before I get into that, so here we have, through linear time in this reality, the movement of the genetics, the genetic vessel. And here comes in our spirit and our consciousness, projected from soul, and boom. Our existence here is actually a co-creation between the themes required of our spirit, our consciousness, and our soul, blending in and merging, becoming unified with the genetic vessel that's been journeying in linear experience in this reality for millennia, if not for hundreds of thousands of years, if not for millions of years, right? So how do you know what ancestor did what? What belief systems did they have? What rituals did they participate in? And when they do these things, and every single ancestor somewhere along the line has been involved in one of these things in one form or another. So we are genetically programmed, right? Actually, when we were genetically modified, meaning the vessel, the genetic vessels, right, back through time, when a certain empire came and took over this world and they started modifying the humans of this planet, because we're GMO humans. And what they did was they we are hardwired, genetically programmed to worship that head of that empire, which people call God. Okay? That we are genetically hardwired for that. So not only do we have to deal with our own themes that we have brought in, when you think of like all your previous lives that you've had in this world, other lifetimes that you've had in other worlds, and the different themes that we're exploring and alchemizing in our journey here, we're also dealing with all the belief systems of our ancestry. And distinguishing between which ones are yours and which ones are theirs is really, really important. Otherwise, you're going to get caught up in this whirlwind and this cycle. You're going to be living a reactive process of trying to sort out all these different issues, one after the other. And I'm telling you now, you could be totally wasting your time working on something from an ancestor 300, 400, 500, 600 years ago, 1,500 years ago, that's coming to the surface now that you actually don't need to be working on because it belongs to them. And if you actually focus on the things that you need to be working on, then the ripple effect affects that ancestor anyway. It will automatically take care of it, right? Because it'll ripple back through time. So, and releases them then. So the main point is to really stay focused on your stuff and try and identify within your experience of this reality, what is yours, what is your ancestors.
Right.
And the more you get to know yourself, the more you get to know your body and the relationship, you begin to realize this is a co-created existence. So here I am, here with the ego construct of George, which is my identity, my persona for this incarnational construct, in full awareness that my body has its own consciousness, separate from the ego construct of George. Yeah. So I'm in a co-creative relationship here between my essence of my spirit, my consciousness, my soul, and the genetic vessel. And once we realize that, once we remember this is a co-created experience, then boom, all of a sudden our whole process here changes and we can more easily identify and alchemize the things that we need to do, and our growth will just accelerate.
I agree with you. You know, what's interesting is I hear a lot of talk right now about ancestors and DNA activation and things like that. And that never really resonated with me because I don't really relate to this body very much. And when you think about it, DNA is the body computer stuff. The ancestors are body computer stuff. It has nothing really to do, at least from what I've been able to determine, it doesn't have anything to do with the spiritual. It doesn't have anything to do, or not even spiritual. Spiritual is even a trap in and of itself. It doesn't have anything to do with, again, what I refer to as the raw consciousness. Who was I before this construct was even created, before this matrix was created? That's what I'm trying to tap into and fully understand. Everything else just seems to be a construct of this construct, a series of belief systems, as you say, and a series of ideas that actually keep us locked further in here rather than being able to tap into who we truly are. Your thoughts?
Absolutely, 100% agree. And also, in addendum to that, when we start to journey into ourselves, and I mean go in, like we're piercing the veil in a point of unity, a single point. Yeah. This is how I come to occupy this space-time location. And this is what differentiates the whole concept of, because people think I'm just a disinformation agent, just talking about chakras, kundalini, pineal gland, as though I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm just throwing mud out there just to discredit it, to stop people from actually achieving their spiritual growth and their path, right? So I get that a lot, but people have no idea that I actually do understand how I come to occupy this space-time location and how each one of us come to occupy the space-time location that we occupy, the mechanics of it. How do you actually come to be and exist in that space-time location that you occupy right there? And what we do is we enter from a point of unity. That's why I have that there. And it is a single point that we pierce the veil of this reality through. And I'm talking subquantum. And from the subquantum realm, the intention flows into the quantum realm. And from the quantum realm, it goes into, and then inside the heart of every nucleus is a miniature black hole, and the energy enters into that space-time location. A little sun is born, the light bursts, that becomes the star, that becomes the sun, which is the nucleus of the atom, because the atoms are the star systems of the galaxies, and the galaxies are our cells. And we're walking universes because of the fractal nature of this reality. And then the energy flows outwardly, just pours out from all the stars, all the suns, all the heart of the nucleus of every atom. And it comes out and it flows out. And then the light flows out through all the galaxies, meaning the cells. And all the cells, the light gets transmitted through our cells. We perceive light through our cells, not just through our eyes. We perceive light through our whole body. We are photonic receptors all over. That's why getting sunlight on your body is so important. And that flow of energy is vastly different to a column of light coming down from above, hitting the crown chakra, flowing through the central column of the body, going down to the earth. It has to anchor into the earth first, because it has to interfere with your existence and your connection to Mother Earth. Then the energy bounces back up, goes into the base chakra. Then you've got the toxic mimic of the natural, what's known as the natural serpent energy, or the great dragon energy. Then that's called the kundalini, which they call the primal serpent or the primal mother, even though it's the Ida and the Pingala and there's a male and a feminine aspect to it. Overall, it is a primal mother energy. It comes up through the spine. The energy at the intersecting points is where the chakras are, certain glands on the endocrine system. The vortexes then open up, the energy flows out through the chakras, and energy pours out over into the 72,000 meridian points on the body. Okay? That's the overlay. And that's vastly different compared to the energy piercing the veil at a single point of unity, coming out from the quantum field, going into all of the heart of every nucleus of every atom and pouring out into the cells. And then we have natural energetic points all over our body, which is a layer beneath this other system. See, this other system, the chakras, kundalini, pineal gland, if you look at it from the point of view of a cosmic conqueror, how do you hijack the perception of reality? How do you do that to the nth degree? And what you do is you hijack the endocrine system. You hijack the peripheral and central nervous system. You take over the way a race, a species perceives reality and the way it exists. And I've been talking about how the pineal gland is a transceiver, and they've got plans to make sure that everybody's pineal gland down the track, after all the millennia of worship that people have done, They're going to go beyond that because now technical intelligence is coming into it. And what they want to do is they want to tap the fields of 5G, 6G, and everything else straight into the pineal gland, because that is a device. It's a piezoelectric device, and it is a biological transceiver, high tech, and it is designed to receive signals, also transmit some, but mostly receive. And I wrote an article. I got beamed years ago. And recently, I don't know if you've heard, but Max Egan got beamed pretty hard recently. Are you aware of what happened to Max recently?
Not really. I mean, I know he was being attacked online, but other than that, no, I don't know.
Okay, so Max got beamed pretty hard. He talked about how his pineal gland was vibrating. They beamed directly into the pineal gland. And this is like he got beta tested too. I did in the early days. It was his turn recently. He got hit with this light that he perceived to be God, and came out and did a video and saying that he was the chosen one and the earth is flat and all these things. And everybody went in this uproar, and everyone started freaking out because Max is a good guy. I mean, Max is one of the bravest men on the planet, and I stand by that because I know the man, right? And for him to cop it like that was pretty, they really wanted to take him out. And so this is what I'm trying to warn everybody about, is what you venerate, because that's what you do as a cosmic conqueror. What do you do as a cosmic conqueror? You get the species and the race that you want to conquer. You get them to venerate the control systems that you put in them, okay? And if we are at the forefront of evolution in the universe, and we are a fractal race, and we have the opportunity, because our bodies are the most powerful alchemical crucibles in the universe, if you understand the fractal nature of our reality, the most powerful, right? So when we worship a deity, what we project is the most powerful intention in the universe because of who we are, because of our construct.
Yeah, they're stealing our power and abilities.
You need to understand the nature of who we are. You need to understand the nature of this reality. Then everything, and I mean everything, makes sense. Or the whole imposition of this planet makes sense. Everything just falls into place. Boom, 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 boom. You will see it all the moment you start acknowledging the true nature of the human race and the true nature of this planet. You'll see it all. And the Max got beamed so hard because they wanted to take him out, and it's more proof that they are heading towards creating a digital soup of reality, calibrating everyone's perception of awareness via the pineal gland straight into corralling people into this technical intelligence version of reality. Which, tell me, if you ask a person, I ask this question in my courses, I go, so where does your awareness reside? Where's it hanging out? Right?
Are you asking me that?
I am.
Oh, my awareness
in
resides
a day. In a day, where does it reside?
In a day. I don't think I understand the question. I know where my awareness comes from, but I don't.
Where's it hanging out? Meaning, where is your awareness occupying? Where are you placing your awareness, your attention?
Okay. I see.
Yeah, you spend hours in front of your computer, don't you?
Not anymore. I did up until about a year ago.
And when you go to an airport, everyone's like this in their phones, right? Cafes, restaurants, right? Buses, trains, everywhere you look, everyone's awareness is inside the technical intelligence reality that has been created, and our human consciousness is being corralled into that space, right? And it's being made
you know what's funny is I've picked up on this over the last year, and I see all these controversies, the transgender issue, where are people going to go to the bathroom, all these different things. They exist only on social media. They don't actually exist in the real world, but it's enough to get people arguing with each other, treating each other in the most horrible ways. And then you step outside and you open the door, nothing. It's totally peaceful. I mean, I even remember when they did this whole government shutdown thing a couple of years ago, everybody's freaking out. Oh my God, the government's going to shut down. I opened the door and the birds were chirping and people were at the grocery store. And I'm like, all these people are freaking out about the government shutdown, but life is going on up just beautifully without it. It all exists. It all exists inside of the box.
Well, I think that's exactly what he's talking about. They're creating a reality that's not even real digitally. And so people will walk out that door and think that that reality is the reality. And so the first thing they say whenever they're at a restaurant or something is, oh, well, you know, there's this huge controversy about transgenders. Where are they going to use the restroom? And they think that that really is the reality. And I think that's what he's saying is it's going to become more of the reality, even though it's not the reality.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Replacing it completely.
Yeah, I get it. No, people even, there's a few crazy people that have even, like you mentioned, George, you're called a disinfo agent and a shill and this and that. We are too. Anybody that thinks outside of the box, we're trying to stop this shift from happening because we're agents of the system or some bullshit like that. But, you know, even when I see all of these people spewing bullshit around, I don't call them disinfo agents or I don't call them this and that. I call them con artists. Because they're really not doing anything but just conning people just to make money. And I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But it's a big con game. But the only thing that's real is our own consciousness and improving our own consciousness. So, I mean, it's funny how people even get sucked into the same kind of mind space, even inside of these alternative movements as well. So not only are they in the false reality with all the television and government propaganda and everything like that, but even coming into the internet, people are taking things way, 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 way too seriously. Let's just put it like that. Then when you disconnect and walk outside and open the door, you find that all of these troubles and woes and all of that are really just arbitrary things, and the only thing that matters is how you are in your own consciousness. That, in my opinion, changes the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And recently I had someone come up who wasn't really that well versed in my work, but I'm glad she came along because it really made a difference in her life, to the event I did in Sedona recently. And she's only like a month into my work, and she turned up at one of my powerhouse, events. I called it Transcending the God Matrix. Now I'm calling it Transcending the Hologram of the Gods. And she was, her commentary, all the questions she was asking, everything, because she's really, I wouldn't call her an activist, but I'd call her somebody who's very passionate about what's going on in her communities, in her community and in her country. And I ended up just saying to her, everything that you're asking me is all about commentary inside the drama of the human world, which is manufactured online, all right? But then this course is about the rest of life, the rest of the world, yeah? And everybody, what's happening with technical intelligence and how our awareness, where it resides, where does it live, what does it occupy, what's the hood that your awareness is hanging out in? And if you're deep into the conspiratorial realm, then you're hanging out in a very seedy neighborhood, just saying, right? Because it's okay in the beginning, it's stimulating, but after a while, it's a dark vortex, and it's just it's gonna destroy you. It's gonna eat you up from the inside out.
Yeah.
It's not gonna help you deal with your darkness. It's just gonna keep allowing your darkness and your own shadows to consume you more and more and more, and your pain and your resentment and blah, 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 blah. And then they've got you right where they want you. Mm-hmm. But when you step out of it, when you actually start embracing your own shadows and your light, and find that balance point and start exiting these paradigms and these dramas in the human world, then we can start stepping into the space where we are actually empowered creative beings operating from natural relationship with our mother planet, with the sun, the galaxy, universe, with everybody else, natural relationship, because I can connect to everyone through my heart soul essence. Yeah, because I'm connected to my heart soul essence. Okay. So now all of a sudden I'm back into my authentic nature. Now I can actually connect authentically to other people, not through ideological systems, because a lot of people are connecting through here, right? Through the headspace, through just consciousness. We need to go beyond consciousness into our existence of the heart and the soul. Consciousness is universal mind energy. It's just one part of who and what we are. And yes, consciousness runs through everything because it is the interface between the intention coming from the soul and the manifested form. So the mind energy is part of the universal construct, you see? And that's why the whole thing about the gods and the hologram of the gods is, and all of their practice and their rituals is all about the pursuit of consciousness. And consciousness only. You'll hear that they're only talking about the pursuit of consciousness. But what one comes to realize after a while through expansion and growth and through remembering, and I just want to really write that word remember. I'll do this right now. And
Before,
I don't know if you got a chance to read that, by the way. And I feel passionate about this.
The eagle spirit, a very great
vision
is needed. Can you? I can't see.
A very great vision is needed, and the man who has it must follow it as the eagle seeks the deepest blue of the sky. Ah, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
And that's how I feel about myself, right?
Yeah.
My middle name is Soaring Eagle. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the eagle, the resonates. Our wedding rings have the eagle feather on it. Yeah. They're actually called Through the Eagle Feather, You Will Speak. That's the name of the set. So
yeah.
So we've been smashed. We've over millennia, we've just been totally smashed over and over again. So we've been fragmented into so many. It's trauma-based mind control, right? So we've been fragmented, compartmentalized. We've got so many different alters occurring in all of us. So what we need to do in order to remember, we need to remember ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get what that means? That means
remember, put back together.
The member are the parts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we need to remember ourselves. In other words, bring all our fragmented bits back into the unity of the whole.
Right. And
right?
So, yeah.
And you can only properly remember, otherwise you end up just bouncing from one belief system into another.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to actually take the real journey of alchemy, right, the real journey of alchemy means you've actually got to look at all your bits. And people would prefer to persecute me, ridicule me, judge me, do all these things to avoid looking at their bits.
Right. Yes. I think you hit on something key there. The majority of the hate that we get, I can, from what I can tell, is from people who hear something that we say, that it triggers something inside of them that they're not quite ready to deal with.
Right.
There's still a lot of things I don't know in life. I'm in the process with everybody else. I'm not claiming, and this is another thing, and I say this in talks, I don't know everything, but I'm helping you to remember. But there's some things I do know from direct experience. I've had a really extraordinary life, right? Not like the average person. There was times when I was getting abducted 2 to 3 times a week for months on end, right? So I've had so many points of reference in reality compared to many other people that it's taken me years, decades to actually come to terms with it myself. My own journey, it's taken me years to come to terms with my own journey and work out how to actually start expressing this that can be actually, people can actually access what I'm actually saying. So it's palatable. So it's actually makes sense. And I had to remember myself, meaning I had to go, and I'm still in the process of remembering, which means I have to look at all of my bits, all of my light, all of my shadow aspects, embrace them all, integrate them all into a unity. And I'm still doing that. Yeah. And that is the toughest thing that any of us can do, is to take a really, really good hard look at ourselves and all the bits that we don't want to see. And I just made a promise to myself, I'm going to start loving all of my shadow, all of my bits. And I came out years ago and I said, I've been the most loving, caring being you can think of in this universe, in my journey through this universe. And I have been the most evil being you can think of in my journey through this universe, because I've been a cosmic conqueror and I've been a beautiful, loving being that's full of peace and nurturing and healing, because this universe offers all different expressions because of the way it's structured. And that is the journey through this universe. But what happens is people end up getting enamored with a self-serving light, their ego, and gets like a porcelain glaze that covers their ego. And I'm not talking about their earth ego. What I'm referring to, which no one seems to be talking about in the circles of New Age luminaries or whatever, is the cosmic ego. And the cosmic ego is a huge, huge problem, because we're talking about an ego on a multi-dimensional scale, and that is a part of us that is cosmic in nature, and it is this ego construct that's pure consciousness. It's nothing else. It's just made of consciousness.